Hello everyone. My name is Art Russell. Welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to offer some information that has the potential to improve the quality of your life experience, your health, your wealth, your relationships, whatever you deem is most important to you right now. The information is related to our true nature, which I'm suggesting is consciousness itself, and the law of attraction. To gain any benefit from this information or this knowledge, it has to be applied. But I'd like you to know that I'm not suggesting or telling you what you should or shouldn't do, especially with any health issues. That decision is always up to you. I will offer, however, that to gain the most from this video, I hope that you'll watch it through until the end. So let's begin. The first information comes from a book entitled The Law of Success by Paramahansa Yogananda. He's probably most well known for his book entitled Autobiography of a Yogi, and also for bringing Kriya Yoga and meditation to the West. Here's the quote. "Mind is the creator of everything. You should therefore guide it to create only good. If you cling to a certain thought with dynamic willpower, it finally assumes a tangible outward form." Mind is the creator of everything. That can be challenging to believe, can't it? This is easier to understand when we apply that statement to a dream within the dream state. During a dream, we assume the role of a character within that dream. And everything seems very real, all the circumstances, all the events during that dream. But when we merge again with the waking state reality, which is this right now, we realize that all of the events and circumstances were indeed made by mind. Mind is the creator of everything. And one of the goals that I have for this video is to help you apply that template of understanding, as I call it, to this right now, to improve the quality of your life experiences. Let's dive a little deeper by taking a look at two words, and I'm sure that you're probably familiar with the first. It's placebo, or what is commonly thought of as a sugar pill. It can also be a treatment, a fake treatment, but it's usually thought of as a sugar pill. Placebo is derived from the Latin term placere, which means to please. And the second word, nocebo, is derived from Latin nocere, which means to harm. Now, I believe that an account from another book entitled You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza can help make this information more clear. So let's go straight to the account. And this is under a subheading entitled, Can You Overdose on a Placebo? 26-year-old graduate student Fred Mason, not his real name, became depressed when his girlfriend broke up with him. He saw an ad for a clinical trial for a new antidepressant medication and decided to enroll. He'd had a bout of depression 4 years previously, at which time his doctor prescribed the antidepressant amitriptyline, otherwise known as Elavil, but Mason had been forced to stop the medication when he became excessively drowsy and developed numbness. He had felt the drug was too strong for him and now hoped that the new drug would have fewer side effects. After he'd been in the study for about a month, he decided to call his ex-girlfriend. The two of them argued on the phone, and after Mason hung up, he impulsively grabbed his bottle of pills from the trial and swallowed all 29 that were left in the container, attempting suicide. He immediately repented. Running into the hallway of his apartment building, Mason desperately called out for help and then collapsed on the floor. A neighbor heard his cry and found him on the ground. Writhing, he told his neighbor he'd made a terrible mistake, that he had taken all his pills but didn't really want to die. When he asked the neighbor to take him to the hospital, she agreed. When Mason got to the emergency room, he was pale and sweating, and his blood pressure was 80 systolic over 40 diastolic, with a pulse rate of 140. Breathing rapidly, he kept repeating, "I don't want to die." When the doctors examined him, they found nothing wrong other than his low blood pressure, rapid pulse, and rapid breathing. Even so, he seemed lethargic and his speech was slurred. The medical team inserted an IV and hooked it up to a saline drip, took samples of Mason's blood and urine, and asked what drug he'd taken. Mason couldn't remember the name. He told the doctors that it was an experimental antidepressant drug that was part of a trial. He then handed them the empty bottle, which indeed had information about the clinical trial printed on the label, although not the name of the drug. There was nothing to do but wait for the lab results, monitor his vital signs to make sure he didn't take a turn for the worse, and hope that the hospital staff could contact the researchers who were conducting the trial. 4 hours later, after the results of the lab tests came back totally normal, a physician who had been part of the clinical drug trial arrived. Checking the code on the label of Mason's empty pill bottle, the researcher looked into the records for the trial. He announced that Mason had actually taken a placebo. So in other words, a sugar pill or something with an inert substance, and that the pills he'd swallowed contained no drugs at all. Miraculously, Mason's blood pressure and pulse returned to normal within a few minutes, and as if by magic, he was no longer excessively drowsy either. Mason had fallen victim to the nocebo, a harmless substance that, thanks to strong expectations, causes harmful effects. Now, I'm sharing this just to help you understand that the mind is the creator of everything, and that indeed what we believe, what we think about, not that we have to monitor every thought, that's an impossible task, but to become aware of what we're thinking and what we're expecting. Now let's move on to a couple of quotes from another book that I've mentioned in the past, The Master Key System by Charles F. Haanel. This was first published as a correspondence course in 1912 and then as a complete book in 1916. The first passage comes from part 1. And it relates to the power of the mind. Would you bring into your life more power? Get the power consciousness. More health? Get the health consciousness. More happiness? Get the happiness consciousness. Live the spirit of these things until they become yours by right. It will then become impossible to keep them from you. The things of the world are fluid to a power within man by which he rules them. You need not acquire this power. You already have it. But you want to understand it. You want to use it. You want to control it. You want to impregnate yourself with it so that you can go forward and carry the world before you. So, Mr. Hanel is definitely stressing the importance of getting in consciousness first what we desire to see expressed in the apparent world, the apparent reality. Here's another quote. The world without is a reflection of the world within. What appears without is what has been found within. And before we leave this book, I'll offer another quote from part 7, a very short line. The law is that thought will manifest itself in form. So there again, he was stressing the importance of the nature of our thoughts. Now let's move forward with a quote and also an account from this book, which is a collection of works by Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard was a Barbadian-born mystic who moved to the United States and later lectured between the 1930s and the early 1970s. He lectured about our true nature as consciousness itself and also the law of assumption. The law of assumption basically states that we should imagine from the desired end that we have. So the result, the end would be the result or the goal, not attempting to move the old version of ourselves, let's say the unsuccessful self, magically into the successful. It would be to go right to the end and imagine ourselves as successful. So let's go to the quote first. The first quote is from one of his books entitled, At Your Command. It's almost a full paragraph. The only way to change your expressions of life is to change your consciousness. For consciousness is the reality that eternally solidifies itself in the things round about you. Man's world, in its every detail, is his consciousness out-pictured. You can no more change your environment or world by destroying things than you can your reflection by destroying the mirror. Your environment and all within it reflects that which you are in consciousness. Now let's move on to the account, which is later in this book, and it's from this collection of his books. It's from one of his books entitled The Law and the Promise. Now, I'll preface this account first with some information. One of the techniques that Neville Goddard advised or suggested using was a technique called revision. And we can imagine this by, let's say that we had an event occur during a day and that we really wished that it had gone a different way. It could have been an event that occurred now. All events actually only occur now. But one that we believed was a week ago or earlier in the day or even years ago. And that by changing how we remember that event, that it will change the current, what's happening now. So here's the account. For 39 years, I had suffered from a weak back. The pain would increase and decrease, but would never leave completely. The condition had progressed to the point where I used medical treatment almost constantly. The doctor would put the hip right for the moment, but the pain simply would not go away. One night I heard you speak of revision and wondered to myself if a condition of almost 40 years, could be revised. I had remembered that at the age of 3 or 4 years, I had fallen backward from a very high swing and had been quite ill at that time because of a serious hip injury. From that time on, I had never been completely free from pain and had paid many a dollar to alleviate the condition, to no avail. This year, during the month of August, the pain had become more intense, and one night I decided to test myself and attempt to revise that ancient accident which had been the cause of so much distress in pain and costly medical fees most of my adult life. Many nights passed before I could, quote, feel myself back to the age of childhood play, but I succeeded. One night I actually felt myself on that swing, feeling the rush of wind as the swing rose higher and higher. As the swing slowed down, I jumped forward, landing solidly and easily on my feet. In the imaginal action, I ran to my mother and insisted that she come watch what I could do. I did it again, jumping down from the swing and landing safely on my 2 feet. I repeated this imaginal act over and over until I fell asleep in the doing of it. Within 2 days, the pain in my back and hip began to recede, and within 2 months, pain no longer existed for me. A condition that had plagued me for more than 39 years, that had cost a small fortune in attempted cure, was no more. And this is signed the initials L and H. Now again, I'm not suggesting what you should do or not do. I'm just offering information that I hope will be helpful. In support of what I've shared, I'd like to offer a quote from the Bible. It's from Mark chapter 11, verse 24. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, prayer would mean what you're thinking of, what the inner narrative is, not in a beseeching way to some imagined God in the clouds that was saying yes or no to our desires, but how we're thinking, how we're feeling. Believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. I'll say it again. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. So this would be the equivalent of Neville Goddard's statement of thinking from the end, not of the end, because that implies separation from the desired end. This, from this perspective, would be of, but we want to be from that perspective. And to support this quote from the Bible, I'd like to offer the following quote, which is attributed to Andrew Carnegie, who was one of the wealthiest men in the world at the end of the 19th and early 20th century. Here's the passage that's attributed to him, the quote. Any idea that is held in the mind, that is emphasized, that is either feared or revered, will begin at once to clothe itself in the most convenient and appropriate form available. So now, the methods. How do we do this? One of the key points is that our statements, if we're making affirmations, they must be in the present tense, as though we already have what we desire. That might be, I am now healthy, or I am getting healthier. We might also use ask-formations, which are less resistant to the conscious mind, which tends to shut out the improved conditions that we claim. We might say, why am I so healthy? Why am I so rich? Why are all my relationships wonderful? You see, that doesn't have as much of a jarring effect in the mind. Another technique would be scripting. Some people like to write what they desire as though they have it now in great detail. So if it was a home you desired, you would write that you're in that home now, perhaps walking through various rooms and describing them, and being very grateful, encouraging an attitude of gratitude that you have it already. Another technique, a method, is visualization. And I'm going to tie this into a method that was described by Neville Goddard, the mystic that I referred to earlier. It's called SATS, which stands for state akin to sleep. So he stated, and this has been my case, that this is most effective as we're drifting off to sleep. Now, it's most likely at night, unless we're a shift worker, but whenever we're getting ready to have a sleep or a nap, that to ensure that the last thoughts in your mind are of a favorable situation. So Neville Goddard suggested playing a scene that implied that your result was already here and now, which is the only place, so to speak, that we can experience anything. We never experience the past. We never experience the future. This is why we must claim what we desire now. So if we desired, let's say, a promotion at our workplace or being successful in business, we might imagine a scene 15 or 20 seconds long, not too long, because then the focus of the mind of awareness tends to meander. but a scene in which someone is shaking our hand and congratulating us for having got the raise or the promotion, or that our business is a success. That's great, you got the job. So when we imagine that in a detached, relaxed manner as we're drifting off to sleep, we'll see that through repetition, that is accepted by the subconscious mind, which then expresses that as our apparent reality. I truly hope that this information has been useful or helpful to you. If you've enjoyed it, this video, I invite you to share, subscribe, and like. I offer more information through my free articles at thinktwice.me, and also through my book entitled This Taste of Flesh and Bones, available from Amazon. Thank you very much for watching. I look forward to seeing all of you again soon. Bye for now.